Hi there.
Hello?
Hello. Okay, so it's saying that we're live anyway for the last 30 seconds. Hi, Kasia, how are you?
Hello?
Hello, yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Witaj, James.
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. So we'll
Perfect.
start with a
Yeah.
little bit of technical, issue at the very
Yeah.
beginning, for which we are very sorry and we apologize. Welcome to yet another episode of the Hello Irlandia Show. It will be episode 107. We are live streaming a special Irish edition of Free Flowing Conversations entitled Looking for the Emerald Island Spirit. And I'm Katarzyna Czekaj, and I'm your host. I'm very happy that you decided to join us tonight and also meet our guest, whom I will introduce in a moment. I hope it will be worth your time because we are going to talk about the present and the future of Ireland. Please help us out by following and subscribing to our social media and help share and spread
Okay, so I'm getting it that Kasia is frozen. She might have a few technical issues, but as for Hello Irlandia, I mean, absolutely wonderful. I'm delighted to come on this platform. I would have been on it for some viewers might recognize my face and voice because Hello Irlandia is broadcasted a number of our demonstrations from around Ireland, from Limerick several times to Galway, I believe even in Dublin, and it would have been Robert there, the photographer. I won't even begin to pronounce his second name, but of course, for all the Polish that are listening in on this, whether in Poland or and you're back here, so I was just carrying you on there.
There is something going on today with the connection or with my equipment, whatever it is. I apologize for it. Usually we don't have that kind of issues, but well, you know how it is. Murphy's law, whatever you want to call it. So we again welcome James Collins, first time on our show. We are very glad that you decided to join us and talk to us. For the viewers that maybe don't know, James Collins is an independent journalist whose YouTube channel titled James Collins Ireland is very popular, of course, among Irish freedom lovers. So if that's new for any of you, please join, subscribe, because James is really a fantastic character. He's a great uh, host of his channel, very witty. It's a very nice and light content, but at the same time, of course, very, very much about the current affairs in Ireland, and of course, anything that kind of affects us from abroad as well. James, lovely to see you. And I would like to ask you straight away, how would you describe the state of affairs of Ireland? Because, of course, there's a lot of things happening actually at the same time. So what do you think is the most pressing issue that the Irish society needs to deal with or face? And, is this the
Yeah.
immigration, healthcare capacity, economic crisis, green agenda, gender ideology, post-pandemic issues, accountability, WHO treaty, NGO, sex education? Is so many of these things, and it's really sometimes hard to pick one main because they are kind of intertwined with each other, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, firstly, Kasia, nice to see you nice, to come on Hello Irlandia. I would have been featured on this platform, wonderful, on Facebook a number of times with live streams from Limerick to Galway to Dublin. So it really is fantastic for people there to check it out. I mean, and good, solid, well produced, good sound. And I think you've done well throughout the last years with the jackboot of censorship as well, because I have noticed that with a lot of the demonstrations and speakers that they seem to remain intact anyway. They stayed up there to access. So look, it perfect. To answer your question, absolutely. It's a hybrid warfare. So it's a multi-pronged attack really on people. And that's the idea, because of course it's to put the lizard brain or reptilian brain onto flight mode. We know that. It's fear. Fear is their currency. So it doesn't really matter what the narrative of the day is, the agenda, because ultimately when you put people into fear, it makes them obviously more malleable. As for if we date it back, I mean, you were named a number of things that we've been hit with, obviously, with this, with the hybrid warfare, whether it be from, big pharma, where we had the spoof 19, as I call it. It was all this terrible, and we saw these sort of mannequins over in China. I'd say half of them they weren't even human beings, with these opaque images falling down on the ground, and of course the level of terror. And then we were told that it was going to be lockdowns never actually been done before, prison terminology. So there's a lot of pandemonium, and of course the angle was always problem, reaction, solution. But I think that the reaction was genuine really back then, and there was a lot of fear, and they bumped up the numbers as well by emptying out the hospitals. A lot of elderly people there would have been receiving much needed treatment there to keep them alive in hospitals. So they turned the nursing homes into abattoirs, and then we saw a huge death count there, obviously, it was really after sort of March, April was particularly, so we had all these death numbers. And then after that, it turned into like a case-demic. So again, it just shows how the fear levels, we heard about lockdowns, it was going from 2 kilometers then to 5 kilometers. And then, of course, there's always, a way out. There's a way out. There's going to be a solution. There's always just a panacea there, or panpharmacon just around the corner. If you follow, of course, what your slave masters say, that's it. So testing was your way out of it. And then it was more lockdowns, and that was driven by more cases. And it was stage managed, really, Kasia. I know we met several times. We were at a lot of these demonstrations. We met a lot of like-minded people. It really was. What they were looking to create was like a phantasmagoria. This was just a world of smoke and mirrors. The great John Waters refers to it as a pseudo-reality. But we were well-grounded, obviously. We could see where this was happening. But unfortunately, for the person who was brainwashed, that was genuinely in fear because they engaged with this pseudo-reality, well, it's like their heads were really scrambled eggs. So they kept on turning on the media, and basically they were trauma bonded, or some people say Stockholm syndrome. It is really it's a real thing psychologically, and this is what happens with psychological terrorism. So they were in the palm of the government, of the apparatchiks' hands, really, of this whole how could you say, oppressive state apparatuses. And this is really what's led us to this level. So if we look at our state broadcaster here in Ireland, then it was the spoof 19. People are being terrorized with Globo Homo. We might go into this later. And then, of course, now we'll go into it there later. I know it's one of the questions there with this Russia-Ukraine system. Of course, now it's another reason there for people to accept punitive measures, to accept talk about 15-minute cities, disruption of food production, energy production, and all of these things.
If I can, kind of chip in here, do you still think that the level of, I don't know, fear or propaganda, because maybe it's not kind of direct fear, of some boogeyman that we don't see, but everybody is, terrified of. But
Yeah.
the Russia Ukraine thing is obviously a bit far away, and will be, continue with this. And obviously, there is the direct impact of the refugees coming over. But do you think that this kind of stage of whatever it is that has been happening for last 3 years kind of wears off, much faster than the previous, pandemic kind of version of the fear mongering and controlling? Do you think that people are kind of buying this issue less and less, and because it kind of hits home very hard, to your pots where you put your food, and to your walls that you need to kind of heat up, to feel nice and cozy over the winter, and your bills and everything? Do you think that doesn't have that much power anymore, and people kind of snap out of it a little bit quicker than in the previous phase, so to speak?
Yeah, Kasia, I think that's a very valid point, because the media, of course, the more you lie and the more you get caught out with your lies, the more credibility that you actually lose. So we are, I suppose, as a whole, I'd say across the world, we know that all these scams are globally coordinated. We are certainly in a better place there, because obviously that fear factor and trust, and respect also as well, because with the whole system now, people, they don't trust really the whole system here in Ireland, whether it be the executive, the Oireachtas, the judiciary, the media, as a whole syndicate. Obviously, they've lost so much credibility. But then psychologically, there's other massive aspects. You see, so many people really want to forget about the spoof 19 because they believed in it. You see, your perception defines the reality. So, as Computing Forever mentioned there before, I think it was possibly in a private conversation, but really, really cogent point. He said, it's people's egos. And that really applies to the professional classes out there. We know those people that are out there. It seems like a good job, a good family. So they engaged with this pseudo-reality, whatever aspect of it is. And now they just quickly want to forget about it. And of course, for the crime syndicate, that's advantageous, because a lot of these people, they want to put it behind them. They want to, if you could say, sweep it underneath the mattress. So again, very, very convenient. So unfortunately, what happens there is lessons then don't get learned, and that can be debilitating then for the person and for others really around them, because you have to fess up. We know that in life. I mean, when you make a mistake, we know with a lot of with the lies in the past and the very recent past, the vox populi fell for it. So there's no real valid reason for individuals to want to run away from this when the majority of people have been had. So a little bit of introspection needs to take place, and only then can, we'll say, catharsis take place. Actually, the shedding of all these problems, and really come to terms that, of course, they were psychologically terrorized. It's not their fault. And then they need to obviously hold the people that are at fault accountable.
So do you think that this is the most pressing issue, or realistically actually to be done right now? Because it doesn't seem like there is any environment to do any questioning. We see that in some other countries, in the States or in Australia, they do approach it. It's actually getting very hard because they are being really pressed not to ask too difficult questions, not to challenge, but yet, certain senators in the States or in Australia and other places, or even Britain, they just, speak up, they do some questioning, they, create some communities, committees that, they are just following on what's been done so far around the pandemic issue and mandates and, the jobs and all of that.
Yeah.
In Ireland, doesn't seem to be an issue. Nobody really wants to go there. I don't know if there will be a situation in the future. Maybe then it will be, necessary to do it. As you said, if we don't do it, we can't really learn from the mistakes.
Yeah.
But apart from that, what would you say is kind of the most precious thing that the Irish society needs to, needs to deal with at the minute.
Well,
What do you think
yeah.
is maybe censorship? Because, like if you can't say things, how
Yeah.
are you going to be dealing with them or resolving them if you can't really address them, speaking about them? So what do you think is the most important thing right now?
Well, yeah, to cover that, the whole sort of edifice of an agenda depends on perception. So, as we know, there's a tapestry of agendas out there. I would say, really, I suppose the level of subversion that's taking place throughout the scholastic system, really, children. So, I mean, this is known for a long time. I mean, they know it. Coming out of J.D. Unwin's book was Sex and Culture. He wrote back even in 1936 that who was it? Aldous Huxley said at the time it was the most important book ever written. And basically, in that, what he's saying is that if children's brains are perverted with degeneracy, then they're lost. So that whole generation then coming up is lost, and then they can easily be coerced and manipulated into doing really horrific things, and then society effectively starts to implode. So I would really say, Kasia, really with our children. Obviously, it's terrible with all different levels, but I mean, we had there, if we date back again, it really seems like a horror movie that transvestites were going into schools there after children. And of course, what I'm referring to there is globo homo. I mean, that's it, coming after the children, this promulgation from government level of degeneracy. It's absolutely sick. We have a minister there for children already that has really nefarious connections, even one that it's with Peter Tatchell. Now, anybody who knows the name Peter Tatchell and knows what he's all about. So old Roddy boy there I said that he was proud and honoured to be around him. Now, he's actually a minister for children. So here in Ireland, that's a huge problem. The previous minister of children was she self-identified as a witch, actually, Catherine Sabone, that was flown in here from Seattle. So I would say that is a huge issue. So I think the people out there really need to focus on the children, the curriculum, the syllabus that they have. We see all of these books. I think Beyond Magenta was one of them. And these are openly endorsing and advertising sex acts with children and adults. So, I mean, that really is, that has to be the demarcation line. That's really when you're moving into, I would say, Satanism at that stage. So, yeah, people need to impose themselves more on their children's life. And it doesn't even mean you don't even really have to have children to speak out about it, because, it's your fellow people. They muddy words like community and make them seem as a globalist word salad world. But it is there. It does mean something. You have a community, your local area, and people, it's the socially responsible thing to do, to speak out and, of course, and protect children. Because, Kasia, you would know, like, you have lovely children there yourself, and they're so innocent, and they depend on you. I mean, essentially, you are a leader in socially conditioning them. So this comes to all Christian values, traditionalism, and heteronormative values. So out there now, this globo homo is completely toxic, and it's basically the celebration of both sex. So I'd say that is thing that needs to be ruled out. Yeah.
I suppose you are right, and this is very pressing, because the children are the future of any society. So, and they need to be absolutely protected. It's funny that you said that, because today, actually, on the radio, which we normally don't listen to it, my family, but if you are in a car, sometimes you put it on and just see what they are up to. Essentially, it's kind of that kind of approach. So there was a conversation about homeschooling on the news talk, that kind of news popular channel in Ireland. And yeah, well, I was actually wondering, how come they brought that up, because that kind of promoting is in a way the enemy, because children taken out of the system, they can't be influenced, obviously, or brainwashed. So that was interesting. I was actually surprised that they were talking about it in kind of generally positive terms. There was no attacking or anything like that. So that was interesting. And again, indeed, the they're asking questions, what actually is being taught in school, especially with the upcoming new year, because I think this is where they are planning to introduce, this changed, modernized, whatever you call it, sex education thing. Yeah, I think it's very important for parents to actually get involved, ask exactly, what the kids will be taught, the program, what kind of aids the teachers use, what kind of books and materials. I think that needs to be absolutely addressed, and of course, better sooner than later. Okay, so coming back to that Ukrainian situation, because this thing is still, hanging over our heads, whether we are far or close, to a certain degree over the whole Europe, regardless. What is your opinion in general about that situation? Should that be even an issue for Ireland? And if yes, in what capacity or sense? I mean, what should the Irish society, for instance, know about that conflict in terms of geopolitics? Because I don't think they are being taught or informed properly and fully about the whole, really wider, picture here, and potential impact as well. Because, for instance, there is a lot of talk about the reviewing the golden rule, the pillar of, the Irish society, Irish state, which is neutrality, right? Yeah. Up till now, everybody was kind of holding on to this rule. So how would you comment? Should we be sticking to this neutrality? Because I think that there is a kind of, urge to manipulate a little bit, with it, and kind of revise it or, update it to the current situation, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you mentioned opinion, and that's it. A lot of people aren't really sure what's going on, because if their only connection is through the mainstream media, as I refer to it as the Mockingbird Media, because, I mean, it's supposed to be a conduit of divergent views, but obviously people are getting the same thing. What happens is it's monomaniacal. The first question really is this: so does Russia have a legitimate concern for the security of the Russian Federation? That's something that isn't being addressed. We're told, again, you see, the thing is with propaganda, and people are falling for the same thing over again, it's monomaniacal. It's focused on one viewpoint, okay? It doesn't want an argument. But it's also melodramatic, because it boils it down for the simps that are out there. And basically what it means is Ukraine good, Russia bad. So as soon as this started, the TV programmed people to go out to the hairdressers and get their hair dyed yellow and blue. So let's look at this, okay, with the Russian Federation. Certainly with the likes of Poland, a military base they're set up there, and Romania, I mean, well, that's very, very concerning. And then, of course, joining NATO, which shouldn't even be still around. It's the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. What's the fact that this is increasing and keeps on consolidating power? It shouldn't even exist anymore. So there was a line drawn in the sand. It was spoken about years ago, of course, there with even Bush said that he would not move an inch eastwards. Now they've broken all of that. So you can say NATO, the neocons, and we know this connection with the Anglo-American connection. So they have been very threatening. They haven't been interested in sitting down with the Russian Federation. And of course, all of this militant, coercive language has been used against them. So it seems for all the money that Putin to make the move there, just to say really enough's enough, to denazify the Ukraine, which we heard about even through the mainstream media, well-known ones from the likes of Reuters to CNN. They were mentioning that the Ukraine, which is only a country over the last 30 years anyway, someone should say that to our former Prime Minister, Jack Boot-me-hole Taoiseach, who was so worried about Ukrainian sovereignty. So it basically means borderless. So as we know, it was part of the USSR. And we know what was happening in the eastern part, most notably Donbass, where Russian citizens are loyal to Russia, of course, were being killed and were being attacked by a self-proclaimed Nazi brigade of the Azov Brigade. I haven't even really heard them in the media there so long, but I believe that they were referred to as good Nazis. So, this is it. Yeah. But really, like what this is, absolutely, Kasia, how does it affect us? Well, you see, this can be used. So tyrants love a war. They absolutely love a war. Now, as we know there these days, things, even the idea of something, the illusion of a war, and then how it affects us. So it could right down to into the future if this continues on. We know that long, protracted wars, no one actually benefits. And we can hear for different numbers. So supposedly, up until a few weeks ago, the Russians took out 2,400 tanks there from the Ukraine. And then they were talking about sending up to 130 between America and Europe. Now, again, what is that only doing? It's continuing it on. It's to prolong it. Now, why would they do that? Because it's advantageous for them. So because they can say all these different things like, price of energy, price of food, fuel, everything like that. They can blame it on that war and blame it on big bad Putin. So yeah, I think really the most important aspect to take off that is it's the same blueprint. It's the same sort of lies, fear, propaganda, that people aren't being told the truth. And this is it's another agenda. Whether it happened organically or not, it seemed to be a very convenient time that we were all told about cases. And here, even in Ireland, they're meaningless. But around about the time that all of these con job 1984 restrictions were cancelled, there was 20,000 cases. And then suddenly people were supposed to be terrified over Vladimir Putin overnight, who was actually president of Russia over 20 years at that stage anyway. And then suddenly we're supposed to believe that he woke up one morning and said, I'm just going to be a maniac dictator and invade countries.
Yes, I couldn't put it better than you. I think you summed it up very well. So I take it that, Ireland needs to just stick to the neutrality. Well, at least that should be ideal, solution. Of course, we know both that they're trying to manipulate with it. But there's really no reason why Ireland should be involved in any of this, being that far, physically, the furthest in Europe from all that mess. Like, there was bigger messes in Europe, and Ireland, really got out of it almost intact, just, not mention, those few bombings then, affected few places in Dublin. Like with such a horrific war, which I, of course, refer to, this is the Second World War, you just survived literally without experiencing it. Yeah. With those very few exceptions. So there's no reason why we should be affected right now. But unfortunately, we are, at least in case of, the crisis, the prices, all that excuses, to just, drain the money out of us. And of course, we have the refugee situation, which is another big issue and quite a hot potato right now. So, would you like maybe to actually refer to that refugee situation? Because Ukrainian refugees is one part. We have also the other refugees that are really unjustified, if you look at it, because they are not coming from any war zones or anything like that. How would you, sum up so far the refugee crisis that we are dealing with, and that ping pong, you are far right, and Ireland is full, Ireland for all, that situation with the latest protest, that was apparently just completely manufactured by various NGOs. How would you sum up this, and where do you think this is all going? How it's going to end up?
Well, yeah, that's it. Initially, really at the start, we told that it was going to be refugees, okay, that were coming for the Ukraine, and that they were going to be women and children. And then suddenly a lot of, let's say, Walala Umbeka Wambasas from the sub-Saharan Africa then turned up pretending to be Ukrainians. So That's the vast majority of people over here. And then you can see that this has really all been arranged. I suppose that would date back there to even these pacts that were made through our involvement with the European Technocratic Union. It could stem back to, I suppose, Agenda 21, Agenda 21, the Amsterdam Treaty. So we can see that from around 99, 2000, there's been a steady enough roll in there of individuals often claiming to be refugee, but they don't. Again, it's a word that's redefined. They're not. There currently isn't a war going on in their country. Some people as well call them welfare or economic migrants. I like to actually distinguish between the two of them because there certainly is. There's a bifurcation. Say, for instance, if Maria from Buenos Aires comes over here to work in Google as a tech engineer, she would be an economic migrant. But say, Walala Wambesa Wambasa that comes over here from Ethiopia and rips up his documentation and then gets into a hotel and is supposed to be there for 4 months before he gets turnkey accommodation. That most certainly, that's, we'll say, a welfare migrant. So we know that we're getting the most of these are coming in from areas like, as I said, Sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria, Pakistan, and now also Albania, Georgia. And we know that there aren't wars going on in those countries. Now, we can see with our friends there in the United Kingdom, the same thing is happening there. So you have to think who is coordinating these events. It seems to be the same rollout, and it seems to be carried out. It's not a democratic process because people aren't being consulted. So yes, Kasia, it is a huge problem at the moment. To say to viewers that are abroad, we now see that they were brought into cities, but they're brought into towns, they're brought into villages, they've been brought into industrial estates. And now it really gets to the case that there's no consultation whatsoever. And some local spots, maybe a hotel that was closed down, and they see a group of, let's say, painters, carpenters, electricians, have a few work vans outside. And that's really it. That's the start of it. Then they might ask them. Unfortunately, we have a problem that, people will... they're workmen out there that think that they're not part of the problem, but unfortunately they are. If you are doing a job, well, say as a painter, a carpenter, an electrician, and you're doing up a hotel, and you know that it's going to be filled up with individuals from the third world that aren't vetted, that are of military age, and that are ripping up their documentation, and that could pose a real problem, because with the level of violence, serious crime that's out there, I definitely believe that we're getting people from these countries, that we're getting the worst from there. They're really flushing their toilets on Ireland, and we can see that with the level of crime. I'd say to a certain point that there's people actually waiting for a trial for a serious crime that are actually fleeing their country, people that have just came out of jail. And I'd say as far as even psychiatric wards, because we've spotted them on the streets, there's tons of video footage of people acting very, very strange, often going around naked, possibly on drugs, medication. And you'd feel for those as individuals, but I mean, they really should not be in here, because Ireland is a really small country, and we've gone above and beyond really to take in refugees, when we know for years and years most of these applicants have actually been turned away. They've been deceitful. They've been claiming to be refugees and asylum seekers when they most certainly not. They did not fit the bill. They did not fit, whatever the criteria of being an asylum seeker, but yet they still come here. So it's a massive problem. And of course, for a small country, our demographics are changing. The level of crime is going up, and it affects every different aspect of life, really, for putting pressure on school systems, for places. Also medically as well, our hospitals, we've had a massive problem with there. And of course, the biggest issue really is crime. It's exploded out there. And people really they're in a lot of fear. They don't want to leave their house, and they have legitimate concerns, and they're being ignored. And as you just mentioned, you paid reference to, then they're actually being castigated for speaking out, being called far right, and all these ists and isms. And it's absolutely atrocious. So people just need to really still come together, and we need to rise rise above all of this, and the issues, these issues, heinous issues, they need to be rectified, and there's people that really need to be held accountable for this ongoing destruction of Ireland.
Okay, so kind of I maybe was planning to ask another question, but since you mentioned that, so I will kind of go a little bit further. So what do you think the strengths in Ireland or in the Irish society that may be helpful to get through those difficulties that the globalists mount in front of us? Where would you like to see Ireland, you know, realistically in 5 to 10 years, if we manage to you know, get through all those, you know, ideas about new world order, you know, new normality, or whatever they call, you know, those new agendas that, you know, they kind of spread in front of our eyes for next decade or so. So what do you think are the strengths, you know, that might help us survive, and where should we find ourselves as a country here, you know, let's say in 5, 10 years, hopefully?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. It's a really broad question. Look, really, this is a spiritual battle. Unfortunately, so many people have adopted this reaction to so many problems that it doesn't affect them directly. It's not their problem. But unfortunately, it really is, most certainly is. I mean, Irish, traditionally, we had a healthy cynicism there towards politicians, aka parasites. So we used to really question and scrutinize what they've been done, what they're doing. But we've become a really... Huh?
No, what happened then? You know, where is this?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's another interesting question that we could go on. We've been turned into a Laodicean population, a population that has a growing indifference for the likes of religion and politics. Now, the attack there is most certainly by cultural Marxism. That people have been affected through the news, through the scholastic system. That's been a massive, massive issue. Now, this has been a long push issue. So you can see the likes of these non-binary cisgenders walking around with multicolored hair on college campuses, and they've basically been bred to self-hate. Now, for some of those, they cannot be helped. But let's say, look, if we could keep this more concise to moving forward on the positives, what we're going to do. As I said, it's a spiritual battle. I mean, the Irish, we're as generally gregarious, we're sociable, but also, you see, we're a herd mind, a herd mentality. We have, there's parallels, of course, with the Irish and Polish people, because historically we're an agricultural race of people. You know, so for that really to happen and do well, you need a good level of social trust, you know, that bond in society. And we've had that. And I think that needs to be repaired absolutely with a lot of people. So that's it. It's going out. It's you're talking about these issues absolutely more and more, and question the social and political order more and more. I think people is so really getting involved. There's no saviors that are out there. So really that Kasia is a massive issue. More questions, and not even so much on socialist media accounts. I'm talking more, enough of that happens in the virtual world, and a lot of that is actually there to energy harvest. I believe that's why a lot of these socialist media accounts have been set up, because I had the wonderful Max Egan from Crow House on my channel there about nearly 2 years ago, and he made this fantastic comment. He said the idea about socialist media is you give everybody a voice, and when you give everybody a voice, no one listens anymore. And so I think people have become desensitized to, technology, looking at problems through their phone, their laptop. So really get more involved in your community and realize that it's your right to do that. Question people. Maybe sometimes change your style. Maybe I've been guilty sometimes before of, you might come across as being too self-righteous. Start asking more questions. So we need to change tact as change agents ourselves, as people that are in the know, that are providing this valuable information onto people. Start asking questions and listening to people's legitimate concerns. And I suppose sometimes you really need to be more patient. So that's really it. I mean, spiritual battle, hearts and minds, and that's it. And and knowing the belief is you can eat an elephant, and it starts with the first bite.
That's a good one. So to just sum up what you just said, it's pretty much taking our heads out of those, mobiles and laptops and tablets.
Correct.
Just go out actually into the physical world and start talking to people. And I do have to say that sometimes, at least at the beginning, it is hard because a lot of people were still, deep into this kind of coma. But I think there are certain issues probably that are more likely to wake up people to certain situations, and the fact that they need to start being engaged into what really is happening around them than others. Because for me, for instance, I don't know, I thought at first that, that culling the herd, like, living in the rural Ireland now, I thought that will be something that people will be, a bit wary of. Turned out, at least at the beginning, I don't know if that situation is changing gradually, hopefully. But at the beginning, it seemed to be like, no, but we are in the European Union, we have to chip in, and like we should do something as well, within that organization. So I was with my husband a bit, hopeless when I heard it, because I didn't see any real concern or, resistance, or just, upfront calling it a complete BS. The idea of, literally killing, 25% of, let's say, milk cows in this country, which is, mainly what you have here is just, cows and sheep and cows, and that's the beauty. So I thought, well, I don't know what needs to happen, for people to wake up, because this is their livelihood. Yes, they can sell the farm, and get a huge amount of money for it. But, like, what are they going to leave to their kids? Like, how are they going to be living, moving forward, especially in the economic crisis and inflation? This money will be kind of, depleting just by sheer fact that the time is passing. So that was quite concerning. So recently I thought, for instance, that maybe they kind of played a little bit over their hand with the insects and bugs that we are supposed to be eating. Maybe that's something that will do the trick, and wake people up. Although I still see on the social media people who are actually trying to defend the whole idea, which is, preposterous on its own. But what do you think? Which one will be kind of how do you say it? That straw that breaks the camel's back, or most likely might be to wake people up?
It's what you say, and ultimately, I do believe that their plans are too grandiose. They've been too greedy, and we're starting to see cracks certainly forming. Remember, we're supposed to still have these Bolshevik Vaxarino passports. Remember that? Everybody was terrified. That was supposed to be, look, all of this, the way they want it. Now, a government's job is to be an administrative system of permits. So that's how they control and regulate. So with everything, okay, an administrative system of permits, that has fallen down. We can now see, and I've heard from a lot of wonderful sources there, that with this central bank digital currency system and this system of credits and programmable money, that the systems technologically are just not there actually for them. They've pushed that a little bit too hard as well. So there's a lot of pushback there, and it seems again too grandiose. Now we're starting to see wonderful things about the 15-minute cities. We can see that over there. I mean, it's had it in Oxford, Canterbury, And now people are aware of this. They actually turned out in London. Of course, the British Brainwashing Corporation are trying to cast them all as the usual far-right rubbish. But again, these ists and isms and the ad hominem every time and not being reasonable and rational, people are getting desensitized to a lot of that as well. And they're starting to actively pursue information. We've got the no car agenda, which is tied in, of course, into the 15-minute cities. They keep on pushing for these so-called electric cars. That's even a lie. They're not electric cars. They're battery cars powered by electricity. And also at the same time, we know that this electricity they're pushing with big bad Putin, he's pushing up there the amounts of kilowatts per hour there. So that is becoming less and less feasible and viable for them to push out. As you just mentioned, culling down the herds. We heard about that in the Netherlands, which is actually, it's a country, it's quite amazing really how industrious the Dutch are, because it's a country the size of Munster. So basically it's a country around roughly a quarter of the size of Ireland, yet its population is nearly 4 times that of Ireland. Well, let's say 3.5 times, we've over 5 million, they've got 18 million. So that's the idea of phasing out meat. And we can see with the disruption of food production also. And then, as you said, the eating the bugs all comes down to this net carbon rubbish. Carbon again. So, but that's the real idea you see behind that, is it's monomaniacal. There's nothing about EMFs, 5G towers, or radiation, or let's say water being poisoned, or obviously the air as well. We know that air pollution is actually one of the biggest killers on planet Earth. But yet, you see, they don't talk about that. They bring it down all about carbon and a net zero, and that will be the panacea then that will solve everything. So it's to get people focused that way. But yeah, I mean, look at ultimately, what do they have here for the people then that are speaking the truth? That these are supposed to be these skeptics of government policy, or these phalanx of conspiracy theorists. And, I think that they've overplayed that hand, Kasia, absolutely. So, and what that does is, you see, when people they get tired of being lied to, they start to look for other sources of information, and that's alternative media. And the alternative media is actually turning into the mainstream media. So people aren't checking into that rubbish. They're not buying their rag newspapers anymore. And again, all these apparatchiks and commissars are starting to lose more and more credibility. So wonderful things really are happening. But again, they still have these main head platforms as well that they can, it's like really having a microphone in a room and having a speaker system behind it. Even when you're the minority, you can continue to talk people down. I mean, that's been hugely advantageous for them. But then there's cracks obviously appearing in that. So yeah, people are starting to question. And then when they question, they don't even need to necessarily know the correct answers. They just need to, and here is the key, stop complying with their own enslavement. Stop complying. And hopefully we need to see more and more of that, because when that happens, the whole system then falls apart. They don't even need to on the surface admit they've been defeated. They won't. They'll just change it up or move off into something else. So wonderful things really are happening. So.
Okay, so just continuing the thread about the independent media. We know that ignorance may be a bliss, and it's been for many people up till now even, but that's not an excuse where the tragedy hits and we commit the crime. So it's not really a good explanation that we didn't know in terms of the pandemic hoax and stuff like that. We need to question. So what would you recommend as a good source of information? Maybe independent media platform, or some kind of essential book that people could read that is referring maybe to the current affairs, or maybe to some historical aspects that are kind of leading up to the situation now, or might explain something that is now happening. To just help people, get through this maze and navigate their families through those tough times, ahead of us, because there will be tough times, whether we like it or not, aware or not.
Well, look, For an intelligent, sentient, true speaker out there, John Waters Unchained, John Waters on Substack is a sine qua non, an essential requirement. He covers issues both domestically for Ireland, but of course worldwide. And we know that some of these factors, so many of them are globally coordinated. So if something is happening in Ireland, it's happening in Poland, or at least they're trying to roll it out in Poland. And they're probably doing the same thing in Indonesia or Australia. So absolutely, John Waters there on Substack. I read a very interesting book there recently by Stephen Manning, Crisis Called Coup. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. And he's really going into, I suppose, the role that people have to play, even the civil service, people, he was really talking about how they exploit and deceive. And of course, how people in positions of authority are morally and ethically corrupt. So really good there that way, sort of philosophical book. So there's other sites there out there. I mean, a gentleman that was on this a few weeks ago, I just mentioned him earlier on, Computing Forever. You can check him out there, obviously on his BitChute. And he's massive amount of subscribers there, and he covers there a lot of issues that are being rolled out. They're attempting to, and we have some wonderful content creators here. So, but it's really, it comes down to that. It's sometimes you don't want to go down the line of getting too much propaganda, too much sort of information. There has to be more solutions there. So as you said, that covers the book. As you said, with your family, I think we sort of covered that, didn't we, Kasia, with if there's younger members, if there's juveniles there in the family, making really that they're protected. A sort of, you can't roll them up in cotton wool, but certainly checking out really what they're watching on television. So much of that is so dangerous. It's deleterious for them psychologically. So make sure then, again, we talked about this all rolls into our reliance on technology. I think really I push for a technological regression, but this brain rot box that are in your hand, they're walking into lampposts out there. So make sure you're not one of those, or make sure one of your family members isn't, because that's of course very dangerous. It's going out there. I mean, for us in Ireland, we currently, we live in a wonderful country. Ireland it's an amazing country. Try get out of the cities if you live in the cities and get more exercise. But really, I think it's reducing the level of fear propaganda that's out there, because it's so disabling, I think, for a lot of people to be under that level of fear, really. And then a lot of the answers, really, as I said, they're simple. We've covered there a whole plethora of problems that are out there, perceived problems, but also solutions. There's a tapestry of agendas working against us out there, but also a lot of the solutions are fairly simplistic, and they're ones that you already know about. So that might be putting down the phone, or let's say if it's food, it's not ringing up Abdul to get pizza or fried pig vomit. They're delivered to your door with all trans fats and saturated fats. Diet has been deteriorating over the last number of years in Ireland. I believe that is a huge factor as well. In my own area that I came from, a little microcosm, Kasia, there was one takeaway there about a quarter of a century ago. Now there's 15 of them there. Now the population level has only increased a little bit. So that's absolutely huge. So it's getting back to these wonderful traditional values. They keep on telling you, all your parents and your grandparents, they were only bloody idiots and they didn't know what they're talking about, and thinking that people are modern and think you're following the vanguard, with everything. No, it's getting down to just these basic healthy tenets of existence, and really sticking to them. And of course, that's really how you protect yourself then, and your attitude, and then you keep your frequency and your vibration then high as a result of living that way.
Now that sounds great, and I think it's a very common sense advice, essentially. And I think the common sense should be just the main thing that we should be looking for and use as well to just navigate through life. So just summing up our conversation, I'm sure you at least from time to time watch sort of guru that raised, over the pandemic with his Rona Chronicles, Thomas Sheridan. Would you say that he was right, and his approach, just wait, actually was a winning one in all that, bonanza that we've been through so far?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of that did apply. Of course, there was so much hysteria there, and even to the point that they were going to be going around there door to door. There was going to be the members of the army or the tug cast there with machine guns, and you're going to be held down. So there was a lot of panic. There was a lot of hysteria, and to a large part, that's because so many people were, constantly watching the mainstream. And what its job was psychological terrorism. So there was so many victims of that. I mean, just wait. Yeah, I mean, I think it doesn't really apply anymore so much to what's going on now. People need to get involved, participate, and take action. This whole idea of just wait and then all your problems will be ameliorated or even alleviated by waiting and non-involvement, that no longer really applies anymore. But it has its merits in the whole idea of this whole pandemonium and the storm and people worried. And there was even people thinking about leaving the country. They had all these ideas about building maybe a treehouse there and hiding, burying the Irish be burying tea bags and burying Denny sausages and Tato boxes under the ground there so they could live out in the wild. So yeah, I suppose that really applied there to that with just wait. And I mean, ultimately, the idea is that you're supposed to keep your head when everybody around you is losing theirs.
Absolutely. I think that also, Thomas, as being an individual who doesn't have a family, kids, like there is a different standpoint that he's coming from, essentially, because he needs to just look after himself, and essentially this is way easier. If we are just as adults already, done with the schooling system and all the rest of it, and we kind of have some kind of footing in life, we can probably navigate around a lot of, BS, a lot of agendas, just omitting, and trying to do, as my husband says, using the Polish word, kombinowanie. So just, trying to just navigate like this, avoiding, all sorts of mines in the field. But if you have a family, I guess, particularly small children, but teenagers as well, because every age has its challenges. That just wait and be very passive, kind of, and be distant to all what's happening. Well, we can't do it. We can't do it because otherwise it might get really, really catastrophic for us. If we're not gonna engage ourselves in the society, in the local community, in the schools, what they do, and I think this idea to talk to people, it's very good. You might find, some really very sound people, and I did find those as well in that community that I live in right now, and it's a good thing to do that, to get our heads out of the social media and just engage ourselves live as we used to. So what are you up to these days? Your channel is every week. Can you just remind us where we can find you, follow you on social media, and if you have any interesting plans ahead of you?
Yeah, absolutely there. So I see Razor Wire. I love James's energy. Thanks very much. Maybe that's a comment in from YouTube. So look, absolutely. I've been blessed to get so many wonderful guests on, and they're into the future. Must sound like when a few miles away. Yeah, absolutely. The Getaway Lifestyle. That's it. So you can find me over absolutely on James Collins Ireland there. That's on YouTube. It's more Telegram. It's more for relaying information there and sharing different videos videos. Sometimes maybe I might write something there, a bit of text there, short enough there, and put that up. But also over on Odyssey, on BitChute, their same name, because the censorship is so prevalent on YouTube. Sometimes I take down a lot of my videos, but yeah, I mean, that's it. So people really should check me out over there. Absolutely. And if you want to, great chat, Dan's Mix. Wonderful stuff. I mean, there's a good content.
I also recommend Dan. It's very concise, but very good. I like his video. Yes.
Look at. There, look at. I was starting off. See, look at this. How I look at how selfless I am. I was starting off there and promote myself, and I'm going on over to Dan's. But Dan's just another gentleman there he's putting over a lot of stuff that's up on, we'll say, the slimes on the Independent, and it's actually just taking headlines and breaking them down. So look at to that. As I can see, we're coming up on the hour. I just want to say also thanks to yourself, Kasia. You've been a wonderful host there. I enjoyed this conversation, and as I said, Hello Irlandia I think is absolutely fantastic. I have checked in it from time to time, and it's particularly with the demonstrations there that were covered, and pretty high quality, and sometimes they might go on for 3 and 4 hours. So brilliant. And I can see there the wonderful Lisa Colin there. Great chat. I mean, that lady there is actually an award-winning expert there on microblading and powder brows. So if you even check up that name there online, I mean, her work pretty much in Ireland is second to none. So for any ladies out there, or some fellas, we know these days there's a lot of metrosexuals out there. So whatever you think, especially with your eyebrows, and make yourself look more pretty or handsome, whichever you like there, get on to that lady, Lisa Colin.
Fantastic. And just at the end of our conversation, I would like to ask, because as somebody already commented, you are bursting with energy, and there is so much positivity and optimism in you, despite all that, nonsense that we've been through. Where are you getting, the source of your really leveled, optimistic approach to life? Doesn't matter what hurts, what kind of hurdle, throws at you. Where is this coming from? Is it like, just you? Was it just influence maybe of your, community or family that you grew up with? Like, where are you getting this spark? Because I think that people really appreciate you for that, optimism and just always smiling face and seeing, the bright side of things.
Well, am I allowed to keep a couple of secrets there for myself? In Ireland, we tap our nose there. I know, look at you, it's like you said. Well, certainly a lot of it, I came from, thankfully, a wonderful family. I was, came up in a wonderful environment. My area, and look, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, you have to keep an open mind, but remember, that's it. This is a spiritual battle. They want you down, they want you frightened, they want your energy to be harvested, they want you biting your nails there and be frightened there. And so no, they're not keeping me down. I like to keep it that way, a happy, upbeat, but also be realistic there about what's ahead of you. So thanks if people were saying that in positivity. Great. Maybe that's not often the case now, but suddenly if I can come across more times as being a happy and go lucky chappy, then I'm really happy with that anyway.
I wish more people were that positive and happy. And I think in general, Irish are really very chatty nation. The nation that likes to meet up in a pub, have a few, and have a great time together. And it was very sad to see how it could be put down, that spark for at least 2 years. So that I'm happy that like, looks like the country is up and running again, as good old times. Do you have any plans for St. Patrick's parade? Because obviously the one in Dublin is probably not the one we should go to, because there will be nothing interesting there for us. Is there any parade that probably will be in your locality, or maybe you have different plans for that day off?
Well, do you know what would be nice? It'd be nice to meet up with wonderful, like-minded people, and it's always a plus if the weather's pretty good. So, you know what? I'm not someone that plans too long term, but yeah, certainly St. Patrick's Day. I mean, it's amazing. It's also amazing time of year as well because you're into spring. The days are getting longer. The weather is getting a little milder as well. So, I mean, that's absolutely to look forward to. But yeah, and that's it. It's a wonderful day out. It's a day certainly for children out there. They should absolutely enjoy it. And yeah, you can go out, you can have your few beers, you have a meal, but certainly be around. I mean, I would say I'm going to look to be around other like-minded people that are happy, that are upbeat, and we can share a wonderful day together. And of course, have a few laughs. And you never know, maybe after a few electric lemonades there, I might maybe sing a few Dubliners or Luke Kelly songs or something out of the Furies, maybe, so that's what I'm looking to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great advice and great plan. What I can actually suggest is, for all those who really would love to enjoy, a good traditional parade and, an afternoon in a pub or somewhere, just in the local community. Look, guys, for a really local community, like small villages. They are probably very unlikely to do any strange stuff on the parades. You know what I'm talking about. At least that's what I've seen. My local community last year, it was very rural, very traditional, no kind of strange stuff going on. And I think it's worth just, do an exodus from Dublin and other crazy cities if they have a similar idea to incorporate in the parades, and just look for something really local and way more traditional, and you might really enjoy that day to the fullest. So with that, I would like to thank you very much, James, for coming on and talk to us. I'm sure our viewers really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks to you, because you are just, a ball of energy and a very positive one. We invite everybody who wasn't following James to go and check his social media. I think you will really enjoy his talks and his guests. And what can I say? I wish you a good night, and thank you very much for staying with us tonight. And we invite you, of course, the Polish viewers and whoever understands Polish for the next week. We're not sure yet who the guest will be. And we just remind you as well that monthly we will have an Irish edition of our program. So, check us out from time to time and see who for the English-speaking viewers will be next. We will be talking to. So good night. Thank you very much, James. And guys, take care.
Míle maith agat, Kasia.
Thank you.